Good evening. A week of great drama, riveting testimony, and raw political battling in the Capitol Hill fight over the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court nomination. Professor Anita Hill has candidly and explicitly told her story of being sexually harassed by Thomas while holding down 2 government jobs. Thomas has eloquently denied the allegation, saying it's just not true. The Thomas battle and the Senate's handling of it have turned up the spotlight on Congress and the public anger being expressed against some of its practices. This was the day, I think, Gloria, when all America had its television sets tuned to the U.S. Senate.
Paul, this was really a spectacle like nothing I've ever really seen in my career in covering the Congress. And what's really so astonishing about it is how quickly we all got to the Senate caucus room today. Just 1 week ago, at about this time, we all figured that Clarence Thomas was a shoo-in for confirmation in the Supreme Court. The last vote count set it at about 60 votes, and there wasn't going to be a problem. And then, and I think we all know what happened, some news leaked, some politically timed news, people would say, leaked to some reporters over the weekend detailing Anita Hill's allegations that she had been sexually harassed by Thomas while she was his employee at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. After that happened, it seemed as if the Senate was going to implode. All of a sudden, the country became outraged. Women were calling and clogging the switchboards. How could you guys in the Senate have kept this thing quiet? Worse, they had a vote that they had scheduled for this past Tuesday afternoon, 6 o'clock. The rules said they had to have this vote, and they just didn't know how to get out of it. The Judiciary Committee Chairman Joe Biden found himself on the defensive, saying that he had kept this thing secret because that's the way Ms. Hill wanted it, and that's what he did. Finally, the Senate leaders conferred. They decided that Clarence Thomas had lost too many votes. They put it off, and they scheduled this hearing for today. And what can I say about today? It was a tragedy, as everybody has said, in the Senate caucus room. We saw a Supreme Court nominee testify for the first time I've ever heard it, telling senators, you know, I don't really care anymore whether I get this job. It's just not worth it, the pain that I've been through. And then we saw Anita Hill come up and graphically detail these allegations that made everybody sitting at that dais, all her male judges, cringe, and everybody sitting in the room and in the country watching on television really quite uncomfortable. And now we just don't know what the outcome is, and we're going to have to wait for the verdict.
Ms. Hill was a careful and composed and poised witness, and some of the Republican senators made repeated attempts to maybe shake her a little bit, to try to discredit her story, but she didn't appear to budge very much.
She didn't appear to budge. I think senators were trying, Republican senators, particularly Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania, who acted as the chief Republican inquisitor, were trying to say, look, there seems to be some problems with your story. It's 10 years old, for heaven's sake. Why didn't you confront Mr. Thomas, Judge Thomas at the time? Why didn't you tell him how upset you were? If he tried to ask you out and you turned him down, tell him to go leave you alone. And her answer was something that a lot of men, I think, in the country had some difficulty understanding, and that was, you know, I was afraid. I should have done it. She said at one point, I'm embarrassed I didn't bring a charge against him, but I was 25 years old. I was worried I wasn't going to find another job.
Gloria, I'm not sure men, a lot of us, will ever really understand how, if such dirty dog things happen, you continue to follow. But one thing you could sense, and maybe it's the same thing, and I saw a lot of men watch, and I went out of my way to go find them, they were profoundly affected by that woman. They sat and nodded and they heard her. Well, and that's I've never seen that happen. I've never seen a witness capture the kind of credibility that she seemed to have with everybody watching.
Well, that leads me to a question, Gloria. Do you think that there are any questions that remain about her testimony, or do you think it's a matter of interpretation?
I think right now we still are going to hear again from Judge Thomas, but I think it is going to be a matter of interpretation. I think right now the public and the senators were hearing 2 very credible witnesses, both of them obviously pained by having to do this publicly. And somebody's got to be lying or shading the truth or not remembering. And I think it's going to be very difficult decisions for senators to make if it comes to that, if it does come to a vote on the floor. And I'm not sure what we're going to learn that's going to be really new.
But the word in the corridors outside the hearing room today was that Clarence Thomas had been damaged by her testimony. I mean, she gave some of the most explicit testimony we've ever heard on Capitol Hill about the sexual practices of an individual. At least she made these accusations against Judge Thomas.
And I think Clarence Thomas is going to have to answer those questions. The questions are going to be put to him. Did you talk to her about pornographic material in very graphic ways after she refused to date you? And he's going to have to answer those questions, but judging from his earlier testimony, I think he's going to deny it.
Gloria, these hearings were chaired by Senator Joe Biden. He seemed to be walking on eggshells throughout these discussions this morning, bending over backwards,
Right.
clearly to be solicitous to her and to women. How do you think he emerged from today's discussions?
Well, let's face it, it's a very difficult situation for these people sitting on the panel in judgment of both of these people. Biden in particular came at this having been criticized, as I said before, because he sat on this saying he did it to protect her confidentiality. The women of the country, maybe even the world eventually, were watching this. So he was walking on eggshells. He had to be very fair to her. I think he went out of his way to try and make her as comfortable as he possibly could. Some Republicans, I think, thought that he was going too much out of his way to make her comfortable. But really, it was such a delicate situation that one wrong word, one wrong innuendo could have really thrown it all off kilter. All of these guys were very, very nervous up there. And in a way, it was good that you had designated questioners because they didn't all get a chance to interrogate her.
It was a delicate situation for another reason, and that is it was 14 male members
Right.
of the Senate putting questions to one female.
And they were nervous about it. They were very nervous about it. And they knew that women were watching them and were going to be judging them on how they questioned her. And I think that most of them did very well, actually. I think they tried to be as delicate as they could.